Right, so this is going to be my 2024 NFL mock draft. We're using this website called NFL Mock Draft Database Simulator. So you see here it shows every single player's ranking and stuff. So all the top players here, you can just sort it by position and stuff too to figure out the best um, prospects at each position. So this is what we're going to be using to show you what my mock draft is. I've been looking at plenty of different mock drafts and player rankings over the last couple of months, and I've been updating my own personal mock draft each week for about the past like 2 to 3 months. So I'm not the best, not the most like knowledgeable on all of these players, but I think I've done some decent research over the last couple of months that I kind of know what I'm talking about. So let's just get started here with the Chicago Bears. I think they'd probably trade Justin Fields, right, so they can draft Caleb Williams here. So I don't really think I got to talk too much about that. I'm just going to go ahead and give the Chicago Bears Caleb Williams, but I am going to talk about a potential Justin Fields trade. I do like a very interesting destination in the Atlanta Falcons. If the Atlanta Falcons traded a pick this year, as well as maybe a first and second round pick from next year, I feel like that could be a good start. Go get a guy like Justin Fields. I'm not 100% sure what the market would be. So, 1 second this year and a first and second round pick next year might be too much. It might be too little. I'm not 100% sure, but I would expect the Falcons to be able to keep this year's first round pick and still get Justin Fields without even trading a single player from their roster. So that's the idea of the trade that we're going to be playing with throughout this video. So yeah, the Bears are going to get Caleb Williams. I feel like they also need a quarterback, right? Sam Howell started the year pretty good, but just not seem to be the answer there in Washington. And when you have a very high pick, like they do, you definitely got to go out and get you a really, really good quarterback. Who I think the idea here is going to get Drake May, who was another UNC quarterback like Sam Howell was. I do like the addition of Drake May to this team, so that's where we're going to go. The New England Patriots, I feel like they also need a quarterback, right? I mean, you have Mac Jones. There's an argument to be made that maybe, one more year with Mac Jones, you just get a really good receiver in the draft here, and then hopefully, make some better moves in free agency and stuff than he did last year. And maybe Mac Jones could be good. But I personally just would like to go get a quarterback, trade Mac Jones to anybody that wants him. Like, I don't even care. I'll take a third round pick for Mac Jones. Like, I don't really think he's that great of a talent. So trade him for something and go out and get you a guy like Jaden Daniels. Obviously, don't need a quarterback or the other teams ahead of them. They got Kyler Murray. They have a lot of needs, I think, but I think wide receiver is definitely their most their best need here. So that is what we're going to do. I believe Marvin Harrison is one of the best wide receiver prospects we have ever seen. I think he would have been the number one wide receiver taken last season. So definitely, I would like to be in the Arizona Cardinals position right here and take Marvin Harrison to the Los Angeles Chargers. I feel like need another offensive weapon as well. I would not necessarily say a wide receiver. I think Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and Quentin Johnson is a pretty solid three tandem receiver group you got going there. But I do think they could use a really dynamic tight end like Brock Bowers, who might be one of the better tight end prospects we've seen in a long time. I do realize that Sam Laporta, was just an amazing rookie tight end, but he was not the highly touted prospect that Brock Bowers is. But I would think that Brock Bowers could have a similar impact as rookie Sam Laporta did for the Lions this season. So that is the move we are going to be going here for the Chargers. For the New York Giants, I think the Giants definitely need to go get a wide receiver. Their receiver group is just completely trash, in my opinion. They probably need a quarterback, but you're not taking a quarterback now with the number 6 overall pick. After the top 3 quarterbacks have already been taken, so you could probably settle for a second round quarterback, which would be a decent option because I don't really think it's going to be worth using your 6th overall pick to take a regional quarterback when you could just get a really good receiver here and Malik Neighbors. I feel like they also need a receiver. Offensive tackle is definitely a position of need for them as well. But I feel like when you have a young, you got to give them as much wide receiver talent as you can. Right now, you only have one like really good receiver, which is DeAndre Hopkins, which is getting older, has 1 year left on his contract. Could potentially be a cut candidate as well for you guys. And then you got your second year guy in Treylon Burks, who was not a great player in his second season. So I feel like you got to go out and get you another really good young receiver to pair along with Will Levis. And I think Rome Dunze is going to be the answer there. Number 8 is going to be the Atlanta Falcons. I feel like this team is a really, really good team. I feel like your defense has been pretty solid. Your offense has been pretty solid. But I do think if you're going to go out and get a guy like Justin Fields to bring on your team, like I mentioned earlier, I think personally you got to go out and get you guys an offensive lineman. I know your position of need here is all like defensive edge and stuff, but I think if you're going to go get a guy like Justin Fields, that you need to make sure your offensive line is one of the best line in the entire league. Because if you have the best line in the entire league, which I think a really good O tackle here could get you guys a top 3 line in the entire league with your dynamic playmakers and Bijan Robinson and Justin Fields behind an elite offensive line, you can be very dangerous. So that is the pick I'm going to make here, is getting a guy like Joe Alt. Bears again. So for this team, Bears definitely struggled a lot with their freaking line issues last season. And you're going to get a rookie quarterback. I feel like we definitely got to give him a good offensive line. It says that your number one need is receivers, but he already has a DJ Moore. He already has a Darnell Mooney, who I think could be a pretty good player as well. So I think you got to prioritize protecting your young rookie quarterback more than getting another third wide receiver for your team when you already have an elite option in DJ Moore. So you're going to go out and get a guy like number 10, the the New York Jets. They have a lot of positions in need. Wide receivers definitely a need for the Jets, but there's not a lot of great receivers to take up on the board right now. So I think personally you got to go out and get an offensive lineman. Your offensive line has been atrocious last season. So I think you definitely got to address that situation, especially when you got a nearly 40-year-old quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. He was not healthy for more than 2 minutes last season. You got to go out and get you an elite offensive lineman to do your best to protect Aaron Rodgers. So I'm going to go out and get the best offensive lineman available in Talise Fuaga. I'm not sure if I'm saying any of these names right, but it is what it is. Next up is going to be the Minnesota Vikings. So I think the Vikings need a defensive edge player. Got some options here. It says that is your number one position of need, and I definitely agree with that. Quarterback is your number 2 position of need, but I think you're going to go be able to re-sign Kirk Cousins this season. So because you're going to re-sign Kirk Cousins, you don't really got to worry about your offensive players right now. You got good running. Well, the running backs aren't great, but you're not going to draft a running back. You got good receivers. Your defense is not really good overall, but I think getting an edge player here is definitely going to help fix that a lot. And Dallas Turner is a really, really good option there. Denver Broncos. So the Broncos are definitely a quarterback needy team. The quarterbacks we have left, we got Bo Nix, Michael Penix, or JJ McCarthy. And judging on the teams that still need quarterbacks, I feel like you definitely could be able to get one of those guys in the second round. The problem is you do not have a second round pick. You see it goes from the 12th pick here to the 76th pick, which is going to be a third rounder. But I feel like you guys can trade this number 76 pick as well as a future second and third round pick to be able to get you a high second round pick this season. So I think you need to do everything you can to be able to flip some future picks for a high second rounder this season. And that's where you can go snag one of those 3 quarterbacks, because I do not like the value of taking a JJ McCarthy with the 12th overall pick, because I think he'll definitely be available at like the 40th overall pick in the second round. So because of that, I'm going to go get your next best area of need here, which is going to be the edge position. And Jared Verse just happens to be the best, the best prospect available, and he fits your positional needs. Next up is going to be the Las Vegas Raiders, who are also in quarterback, who are also potentially a quarterback needy team. But especially if the Giants and Broncos both just passed up on a quarterback, that means you still got three whole chances to get a quarterback early in the second round with your 44th overall pick. So I think, one of those three quarterbacks will definitely be available at pick number 44. So it's definitely not worth it going out and gambling on taking them here at number 13 when they're going to be available with the second round pick. So I think you got to go get the next best prospect available, which is going to be cornerback Terrion Arnold, who just happens to fit your number one positional need. Number 14 pick overall is going to be the New Orleans Saints. I think they definitely got a lot of areas of, concerns that they need to address. They don't need a quarterback. I don't really think they need a receiver. Michael Thomas and Chris Olave are good. Rashid Shaheed is pretty good. Taysom Hill's a solid tight end, but he's not necessarily their number one tight end because he plays a bunch of different positions. So I would try primarily to get a defensive player. You definitely need offensive linemen as well, but um, I like the positional value of Lealty Latu here over a guy like JC Latho. I would not be upset with either one of these picks, but personally, I'm going to go out and get you guys a guy like Lealty Latu to bolster your defensive line. Number 15 is going to be the Indianapolis Colts. Definitely need a receiver on your team as well as a corner. Those are your top two areas of need. There's not a lot of receivers here that makes sense at this value, so I'm pretty sure corner is the only logical option here, especially with there being no elite defensive linemen that match the value of this pick either. And the best prospect available just happens to be the guy that fits your number one positional need. So I think Nate Wiggins makes a lot of sense here for the Indianapolis Colts. Number 16 is going to be the Seattle Seahawks. I feel like they need a defensive lineman. That's my personal preference. It says they need edge and D line, and then OT and interior O line. So their top four areas of need are their entire offense and defensive line. So that is definitely a concern. But I do think that the offensive line group is deeper than the defensive line group. So I feel like you need to go get a defensive lineman with your first round pick, and then hopefully you can still get a solid offensive lineman with your later picks. You got two third round picks here. You don't have a single second round pick. So maybe if you wanted to package one of these third round picks and some other picks for future years to get you another high second round pick or something to get you like another good offensive lineman as well as a good defensive lineman, that would make a lot of sense here. But with your number 16 overall pick, I would probably go out and get you a guy like Jer'Zhan Newton to help you on the defensive interior. Next up is going to be the Jacksonville Jaguars. I personally think they need a wide receiver. The number one needs here are corner and receiver, but with you guys probably losing Calvin Ridley this offseason, you only have one good receiver on your team in Christian Kirk. Parker Washington and Jamal Agnew are like okay guys, but you do not want either one of those dudes being your wide receiver two for you. So I feel like you got to go out and get a good wide receiver. You definitely need corners as well, but I feel like positional value for you guys, is definitely like the corner definitely makes sense, but I feel like you got to look at your team and think that you definitely need to fill that wide receiver spot. So I'm going to do that in getting Brian Thomas for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Next up is going to be the Cincinnati Bengals. I feel like they have a lot of areas of need as well, but I think I'm going to personally go wide receiver for them because lose at least one of T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. They might lose both of them, and you cannot risk guys. So I feel like getting a really good wide receiver in this thing makes a whole lot of sense. Obviously, we're going to know a lot more about what their roster looks like going into the draft. So if they are able to re-sign both of those guys or even one of those guys, then maybe you go offensive tackle here. But I personally am not very confident in you guys re-signing either one of T. Higgins or Tyler Boyd. So I'm going to predict you guys go out and get a wide receiver as well. And the next best wide receiver just happens to be Keon Coleman out of Florida State. Rams, I feel like they got a couple different areas of need, corner, D-line, Definitely all solid options personally. I'm going to go out and look at positional value here. So it's definitely between the offensive tackle and corner because your next defensive lineman does not come up until number 23 on the board. And you got plenty of offensive linemen and corners that, can help fill your positional needs. But personally, I think offensive lineman is going to be more important for you guys than corner. Because of the area of your team when you got Kyron Williams, who's one of the best running backs in the league already. You really do not want him to be behind a poor offensive line. And with an aging quarterback in Matthew Stafford, you do not want him to be behind a poor offensive line. So I think you got to go out and get you a guy like J.C. Latham from Alabama to help support your offensive line. Next up is going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers, which I think this is probably where we're going to see another corner get taken. Their top area of need is corner. The top three prospects available are all corners, so it only makes sense for them to take one of these corners, and I believe Cooper DeJean would be a really, really good addition to this Pittsburgh Steelers team, so that is going to be the move for them. Next up is the Miami Dolphins. I believe Miami Dolphins have a lot of areas in need as well, honestly. But just looking at it here, I feel like an offensive tackle makes the most sense. Their top two areas of need are offensive linemen. So looking at that, the best offensive lineman available is Amarius Mims here. He's the third best prospect available total. So I think that makes a whole lot of sense to fill your number one positional need here by getting a really good offensive tackle in Amarius Mims out of Georgia. Philadelphia Eagles at pick number 22. Their secondary is kind of trash. Their offensive line definitely has some question marks on it because we don't really know what Jason Kelce is going to do 100%. That definitely makes a little bit of a difference, right? Because he's still a really good offensive lineman. But if he retires, then you definitely got to go out and get an offensive lineman for your team. So that is the move that I'm going to make for you guys probably. But like if you were to do that, but I think Jason Kelce re-signs with the Philadelphia Eagles for at least one more season and gets a proper going away season instead. So I think you're going to go out and fill your secondary needs here by getting the best cornerback available in Quinyon Mitchell. And next up is the Houston Texans. It says the number one team need is a wide receiver, but I don't necessarily agree with that. You got two really good receivers in Tank Dell and Nico Collins. Your wide receiver 3 is not very good right now with Noah Brown, maybe, or Robert Woods, but I don't even know if either one of those guys are under contract for next season. But I feel like you can definitely sign a decent wide receiver 3 in free agency or sign a decent wide receiver 3 or in the second round of the draft. So I think you got to go out and address other areas of needs for you, which your second area of need here is going to be an edge player. So I'm on the fence between getting an edge guy and getting another defensive lineman because like Byron Murphy here, probably makes more sense value wise. Getting an interior defensive lineman, I think an edge player is going to be a bigger point of emphasis. I think an edge player is going to be better for you guys personally. So I do like the idea of getting a guy like Chop Robinson here out of Penn State. He goes by, this whatever Demiun is his real name, but he goes by Chop Robinson. So that's going to be the pick I make for the Houston Texans. For the Dallas Cowboys, you got a lot of issues as well. Offensive line, corner, D-line. I think your corner is actually pretty set. I mean, Stephon Gilmore, I'm not 100% sure what his free agency situation looks like. But you still got a guy like Trayvon Diggs who should be coming back next season to be pretty good. Deron Bland was really good for you guys this season. So I think you got to go out and get an offensive lineman to help your team out here. And that does coincide with their number one positional need. So getting an offensive lineman here makes a whole lot of sense. And the best offensive lineman available is Troy Fautanu out of Washington. So that is the pick I'm going to make for you guys. Bay Packers, I feel like they definitely got to address their secondary. The secondary is just simply not good. So I don't really. I think Kool-Aid McIntyre out of Alabama, he's the best prospect available. He fits your number one positional need. So it just makes too much sense to draft Kool-Aid McIntyre here for the Green Bay Packers. Next up is Buccaneers. They need edge, receiver, corner. Good area of need for them, but I feel like they will be able to re-sign Mike Evans. So if they can re-sign Mike Evans, they still got Mike Evans, they still got Chris Godwin. They can easily sign or draft a wide receiver 3 at later points in time. So I feel like their first round pick does not need to be a wide receiver. I think they got to specialize here or target more of a defensive lineman. And they definitely specifically need an edge player rather than an interior defensive lineman like a Byron Murphy. So going for the best edge player here is going to actually be Braylon Trice for the Buccaneers, which is going to be the pick I'm going to make, is getting Braylon Trice out of Washington. Next up is going to be the Arizona pick that they traded to them last season when they traded up for Will Anderson. So Arizona Cardinals here. I already got them their wide receiver here, right? They definitely got a couple areas of need with like cornerback or edge players, a couple different moves that they could make. I personally think that they should go for their defensive line here. I feel like the value just makes a lot of sense. Like they definitely need a corner, but I don't know if the value makes a whole lot of sense to get a guy like Ennis Rakestraw here, considering they also have the number 35 overall pick. And the cornerback position is certainly more deep, I believe. Looking at this, you got like Kamari Lassiter here, who you could probably very easily get with that number 35 overall pick. And if you're looking at, your defensive lineman, you got a big gap drop off. Your pieces don't make sense for you guys here at 27 or 35, really. Your defensive line don't make sense for you guys at 35 because Byron Murphy's probably going to be gone by that point. So I get a guy like Byron Murphy right now because it fits your positional value that you need, and it allows you to still get a really corner with a number 35 overall pick, as long as Ennis Rakestraw or Kamari Lassiter is still available at number 35, which I would assume Kamari Lassiter probably is. So because of that, I'm going to be taking Byron Murphy here for the Arizona Cardinals at pick number 27. Next up, I think they got a lot of issues on their team as well, but I think wide receivers is the number one area they have to address. Gabe Davis is a free agent. You guys will probably be able to tag him, I think, but not 100% confident on that. Stephon Diggs, there's been some rumors that he might get traded or want out. So, you definitely got to address your wide receiver room, I think, especially if one of those guys are going to be gone. That's definitely going to cause a lot of problems. Wide receivers here available here, you got like Troy Franklin, Adonai Mitchell, or Ladd McConkey. I'm just going to go out and get you guys the best wide receiver available, which is going to be Troy Franklin here out of Oregon. I think it makes a whole lot of sense for them to get a corner. The secondary is not amazing, right? And corner is a need. Definitely do not need an offensive lineman with this pick, I think. And looking at the best prospects here, most of them are either offensive linemen or quarterbacks. And the only outlier there is Ennis Rakestraw here, who is a really good corner, who just happens to fit your positional need and makes a whole lot of sense here in terms of value. So Ennis Rakestraw seems like a really good option for the Detroit Lions here. Next up is going to be the Baltimore Ravens. It says that the number one area of need is a wide receiver, but if I'm the Baltimore Ravens, I'm not necessarily looking at this receiving group and be like, but interested in that, because I do think you got a decent group of receivers on your team currently, right? Get OBJ back for a second season, or you got plenty of wide receivers that you can sign to one-year deals that would be interested in playing for the Baltimore Ravens for a fairly cheap deals, I think, right? So as long as you can sign like one or two like solid receivers in the offseason this season, I feel like it makes a lot of sense to go elsewhere in the draft right now, and then maybe next season you can go draft wide receivers. Because I think you got a really good one in Zay Flowers. You got a couple of young guys like Rashad Bateman, who's okay for you guys right now. I don't necessarily think that you have to go out and draft a wide receiver right now when you could just take 1 year of take 1 year of signing some more free agent guys, kind of like you did with Odell Beckham Jr., right? Just take 1 year of signing a couple of good free agent receivers to 1 year deals, right? And then Next year, I think you should go out and draft a wide receiver. So since you're not going to get a receiver, sorry, since you're not going to get a receiver with this pick this year, I think it makes a lot of sense to go out and get a defensive back here, a corner. Corner's your next best area of need. So I think you personally got to go out and get a guy like Kamari Lassiter. Now I know that kind of screws over the who was it? Screws over the team that I made draft somebody else when they were hoping to get Kamari Lassiter in the second round. But that's just the gamble that team that I thought was like made sense for that team to make. So I think you guys are going to go out and get a guy like Kamari Lassiter. It makes a whole lot of sense for your team. Next up is going to be the San Francisco 49ers. There's not a whole lot that you guys actually need on your roster. And it's telling me your number one positional need is offensive tackle. So because of that, look at the best prospects available. You got a bunch of offensive tackles and a bunch of quarterbacks. So like you don't need a quarterback. Next guys are receivers. You don't need a quarterback or a receiver, right? So I think you got to go out and get a guy like Tyler Guyton. He just makes a whole lot of sense and is filling an number one positional need. Next up is the Kansas City. Said this with the Ravens that the wide receiver value does not make a whole lot of sense here, but for the Kansas City Chiefs specifically, it does because they have a lot more receiver issues, personally, I think, than the Baltimore Ravens. They have a lot more guys that I think are on expiring contracts this season. They definitely have to address their receiving position more than the Ravens need to address their receiving position. And the Chiefs have already done this like 2 years in a row, just signing some dudes in, like just signing a couple guys in free agency that can help fill them in for 1 year deals. So I feel like they need to go out and get them a legitimate receiver prospect here, like they did with Rashee Rice last season and Sky Moore the year before. You got to go out and draft a receiver high and hope that they can be, a consistent long-term piece for you because you can't keep going every single season just by signing a bunch of guys to 1 year deals. So I think Adonai Mitchell here for Kansas City Chiefs makes a whole lot of sense in my opinion. So that is the move we are going to make here for them. Now, this is going to be the end of the first round mock draft. I'm not going to go on to the second round, but I am going to note that there are 2 or 3 quarterbacks left who I think are going to go early in the second round. So just looking at these quarterbacks here, let's just make some random picks for these other guys until I get to those teams. Right, I'm not really caring about anything else right now. I just want to show you guys what I'm doing with these picks. So the Commanders here, right? I feel like the Commanders are certainly in a. Wait, no, they already drafted a pick. So never mind. I feel like okay, yeah, this is what I was saying. I'm gonna keep going. For this round. Sorry, I messed myself up a little bit here. Giants. Okay, Giants. See, like I said, I don't think any of those quarterbacks above the Giants are drafting a quarterback. So right now, with the 39th overall pick, they still have all 3 of these quarterbacks available. So it's definitely not worth it for them to draft one of these guys with the 6th overall pick because they're all available right now. So personally, if I'm the Giants, I like the idea of getting a guy like J.J. McCarthy on my roster, and it makes a lot of sense to do it here at 39 as opposed to number 6, because at number 6, they're not he's still going to be available at number 39. With pick 39, you could gamble at 39 and hope that one of these guys are still available at 47. But there's certainly a world in where all 3 of these guys could be gone by pick 47, or at least 2 of them could be gone by pick 47. So you could still get one of them. But I feel like you guys want to take the chance right here to get the guy that you really want, which I think is going to be J.J. McCarthy for the New York Giants. And then the Commanders here, this is where I was getting a bit confused because I projected that the Denver Broncos would actually trade up to get Commanders' 40th overall pick here. I think if the Broncos gave away their 3rd round pick this year and a 2nd and 3rd round pick next year, they could get this 40th overall pick here from the Commanders. So that's the trade that I'm going to do. So this pick is technically for the Broncos, even though the team here is Commanders, because I don't think I can do trades in this thing. But I think the Broncos here at number 40, after trading up, could go get a guy like Bo Nix And I think that makes a whole lot of sense for the Denver Broncos. And then next up, we're going to keep going here until I get to the next team who's going to draft a quarterback. So let's keep going here. Las Vegas Raiders. So again, you still have Michael Penix available here at number 44. You did not necessarily get the quarterback of your choice between those three guys, but I do think it makes a whole lot of sense to still wait out and be pretty happy with taking Michael Penix here at 44 rather than maybe taking J.J. McCarthy at number 13. Because I feel like J.J. McCarthy, Michael Penix, and Bo Nix are all on the same tier of talent, in my opinion. So I feel like you're definitely comfortable with taking Michael Penix at 44. And even if your main target was going to be a Bo Nix or something. So that is going to be the end of my mock draft. I think those three guys get drafted to those teams in the second round. Makes a whole lot of sense for me. The only other quarterback that I see taken that makes a whole lot of difference. I think the Minnesota Vikings maybe could go get a guy like Spencer Rattler in the third round or something. And then he can go sit like a year or two behind Kirk Cousins, depending on how long his contract is. He can go sit behind Kirk Cousins for a few years and then maybe take over the starting spot. But yeah, that's basically going to be the end of my video here. Let me know what your thoughts were. Let me know what you think about all of these quarterbacks going. And yeah, thank you for watching.